Figure it out.
Hello, this is Adam Koralik from Figured Out Productions. The following video is a video of some kind, and I hope you enjoy it.
Hey guys, it's Adam here, and today we're going to be talking about our sort of friend, the Xbox One X, and specifically how to get it up and running in the event that it's booting up and, well, not booting up. For those who don't know, I did a video like this a few years ago. If you have an Xbox One that boots up into a black screen and does nothing, there are various type of error codes that can occur with an Xbox One. This one in particular is giving me the E102 error, which can be one of two things. It either means that the hard drive is failing, I really hope that's not the case, or it's just a software update. I assume it's that because the system was working fine. I did Microsoft's most recent system update, and then immediately this started happening. So, you know, probably the case. So in order to make that work, you have to update the system offline and do a few troubleshooting things, and we're going to talk about that. If you guys could do me a favor before we go any further, like this video, comment down below, subscribe if you've never done that before, and check out all my social media stuff in the description. I've got Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Discord, Patreon, my Spreadshirt, my travel channel known as Flying and Eating. I appreciate the support on those platforms. Thank you so much. Let's get into it. So basically what happened with me is this morning I fired this thing up and, you know, it had the system update. I let it run, it rebooted, and then it seemed to be kind of okay. And then I was like, okay, cool. I turned it off for a little bit. I went back to it to run just YouTube, and the system would not boot up, which I thought was odd. And then I went ahead and told it to reboot. Then it booted up, seemed okay, and then nothing would really work properly. And then I went to reboot again, and then I just got the E102 error. So there are a few ways to address this. Basically, E102 will prompt automatically if the system is essentially in safe mode, or if the system can't seem to detect the hard drive / the OS, which either one can happen from, again, either hardware failure or software corruption, and I'm, again, really hoping it's software corruption. So if your system is still booting up into the dash but is having issues, you have to kind of force it into safe boot mode. In order to do that, you want to turn the system completely off. And when I mean off. Like, once it's off, unplug the power cable, then wait a little bit, plug it back in. Then what you're going to want to do is hold the sync button and the power button at the same time. You'll get one initial beep, and at that point you can let go of the power button. Keep holding, you should hear a second beep, and then you'll be presented into the safe mode. This one doesn't need to do that because it can only have safe mode. So we're going to boot it up here in a second. Now, in order to fix this, potentially, you have to update the system offline, or you have to try and go through a series of damage control options. So let's show you those options. So this one, I'm going to go ahead and boot up. And the monitor here, which crudely set up, I admit, but you know, you should get a sense of everything you need as soon as this thing feels like going. All right, here we go. Yeah, see, this is as far as this system gets, okay? So there's two things you can try ultimately. So troubleshoot is where you want to go. Now, what you can reset the Xbox. What this will do, we can click on it, this was basically the solution necessary if you have the total black screen of death other than the dashboard, which is not the case with this particular system. You can basically tell it to basically clear the cache, refresh, you know, everything, just dump everything, but it will keep certain data such as games and apps, which is inconvenient to lose because it requires reinstalling everything, but is not necessarily essential. And then the cleaner method would be to remove everything. Now, this particular Xbox really had nothing on it other than my profile, so losing all of that data is meaningless because as soon as I log back in, all I have to do is download like the Blu-ray software, the YouTube app. I don't use this console for gaming. This was more of a streaming device. So there's not really any great loss there. So I went ahead and I did the remove everything option, which I'm not going to bother with on this point because if that doesn't work, and it didn't, it just presented me right back to this same screen, meaning it did nothing. So the only other option at that point is updating the system offline. Now, in order to do this, Microsoft makes this relatively easy. They have a page on the Xbox website. Basically, you just look up like E102 and do system offline update. That's what you want to do. It's a 6 gigabyte file. It is a zip file, and once you open the zip file, which you have to do, I believe, on Windows, maybe you can do this on Macs now, I have no idea, I don't use theirs, but either way, you have to open up the zip file and extract the system folder that's inside, and it must be put on a flash drive. Now, that flash drive is important. It has to hold at least 6 gigabytes of data, and it must be formatted to NTFS, which is not common for a flash drive. Flash drives are usually formatted to FAT32 or exFAT these days. But NTFS is more of a Windows protocol, an older one, but it's what it must be in. So this particular flash drive that I put into it, I had to do that first. Make sure you take everything off of it that's of any importance to you on the flash drive, do the full format of it, and then dump that folder on there because you're going to lose everything else. And don't put anything else on that folder. Just put the folder in the root directory and nothing else. And then we're going to go ahead and run the offline system update. So it's going to go ahead and prepare. Now, I don't know how long this is going to take or if this is even going to work, but we're going to give it a shot. So we will cut back when there's something else to show. Okay, we're back. It's been a few days, change of clothes, the whole thing. So long story short, the Xbox does in fact work now, but its process was a little more involved. So we're going to continue your troubleshooting options in the event that you were having the same E105 or E102 error. So the last time you saw me, I was trying to update the console offline, hoping that it was simply a software issue and that was it. So basically, the update did not take. It only got to like 6%, and then the system would just boot into that same like loop of failure. So I was like, okay, it's the drive itself. What do I do about that? Now, a little history here. You can actually replace the hard drives on Xbox Ones, and as you can see, it works just fine now. That's the entirety of the boot up time. And there you go. We're in the dashboard, and you can see I've just had, like I said, apps installed, etc. So like that's really all I ever use this Xbox for. But now it works perfectly. Okay, so if you're in that situation, you've gotten this far, this is what you're going to want to try. Now, you can change the hard drive on these things. Actually, years ago, I had a different Xbox One X that I still have it, but it was the hard drive in that one had actually been replaced by a 1 terabyte SSD by a buddy of mine named Mr. Mario, who's another YouTuber I'm sure a lot of you guys know. At the time, changing out a hard drive on an Xbox was a lot harder. Microsoft has never officially supported that, unlike Sony, who does, where you can kind of just do it yourself. At the time, the hard drive had a serial number on it that had to match like the drive and the board. It was complex, and in order to swap out the drive, you had to basically perfectly mirror the functional drive before you could do that. Well, in my case, the drive was non-functional, so it's like, how would one even do that? So I actually asked him, like, what do I do? And he basically more or less said, like, it's changed. At some point, Microsoft did a system update, and I don't know if this was news and I missed it, or if this was just a background thing. They actually unlocked that. It no longer has to match any sort of serial. Basically, if it fits, it sits. You know, like if it works, yeah, no problem. So basically, I looked at the teardown of the system, which there's a lot of guides online about. I can't do that. I realized that when I was looking at it. I'm like, this is beyond my skill set. So I went to a buddy of mine named Chicago Pizza Slut, also known as Chicago Pizza Dad. He's a guy in my Discord. Everybody in my Discord gets fun nicknames. And of course, he lives in Chicago, hence his name. So no big deal for me. I live there. So I met up with him and I was like, can you do this? And he was like, yeah, I could do that. So what he did is he took the system and he took it apart. He got down to the hard drive, and the original hard drive is right here, which we're going to talk about in a second. And I said, well, since we're in there, let's do it correctly. So I got a 1 terabyte SSD. Now, the funny thing about the Xbox One X specifically, this iteration of the Xbox, is Microsoft really designed this to use an SSD. They just didn't actually put one in there. As you saw, the boot up time is much faster. Everything just runs better. It's really what the system was meant for. So I recommend if you're going to do this and you don't mind spending the money on it, of course, put a 1 terabyte SSD in there. However, it is worth noting that you could also put a 500 gigabyte drive or a 2 terabyte drive. Now, you don't actually have to put in an SSD. Like if your old one's dead and you have like a spare 1 terabyte or 500 gigabyte or 2 terabyte mechanical laptop drive laying around, you can actually use that. But don't use any other sizes. Don't be like, oh, I'm going to put a 4 terabyte in there. It's not going to work. Those 3 sizes are the only ones that are ever really known to work. Because again, Microsoft doesn't officially support this. They just don't make it as hard to do as they used to. So he went in, he took the system apart, he put the SSD in, and then we booted it up, and it was that same error screen, but that time we expected it. And so at that point, you just do the same offline update that I was trying to do before with the same exact install file off of Xbox's website. This time it proceeded, it completed the update, and then he was done. He put it back together and handed it to me. When I got it, I went to go do initialization, which I have a little bit of footage of. You get, the first thing it lands on is the initialization page, which, fun fact, with whatever they're doing now, you can't actually do that with a controller. At least I couldn't. It was like, you need the app. So I had to use a QR code on the screen to communicate with an app that I don't have, which was stupid. Log into that, and then it completed the first page, and it's like, okay, cool, you've done the first page. Now you have to use our app to do this. And I was like, ugh. So I started trying to get it to do that. The app on my phone crashed and just wouldn't work. And I was like, why? So it's like you won in the sense that the hard drive is easier, but now I have to use an app to turn on the console. It's just so stupid. But anyway, even though it failed, as far as the app is concerned, it got me past the first page. Once I was past the first page, I could just use, the controller, and then I was able to get through everything. It went ahead and it booted up and did a ton of product pushing. I'm like, oh, do you want Spotify? Do you want Game Pass? It's like, no, I just want to log in. That's all I want to do. And eventually that was all set. And so everything is completely hunky-dory over here now. So no issues whatsoever. Now, when I got the system back, I was of the expectation, like, cool, the thing is upgraded. It sucked that I had to buy an SSD, but, like, I probably would have done that eventually anyway. This just kind of forced me to take care of it. And then I was like, I'm curious what ended up happening to this drive, because I'm assuming mechanical failure. So whatever. I'm going to connect it to a PC and see what it does. Now, I know from experience, the other 1 terabyte drive I had, which I took out of that Xbox, or Mr. Mario did more accurately, but when we connected it to a PC years later, like, it would not register, because Microsoft, like, even though that drive was perfectly fine, because Microsoft, they make Windows, they also make Xbox. They do not want you putting those drives in a PC. So basically, it would detect there was a USB interface, and that's as far as it would go. So I had learned back then how much of a pain it is to format those drives. It can be done, it's just tedious. So when I popped this in, I wasn't really sure what to expect. I thought, if it even detects anything, because the drive itself wasn't working, we'll see what happens. So I plugged it in, and this is where there's an additional optional step that I did not know about. See, at some point, Microsoft must have updated this, maybe in that same unlock situation, because Windows immediately recognized this drive as an Xbox One drive. It even said, like, oh, this has, like, multiple partitions, etc. You can read and write to them, whatever you want to do. And I was like, some of them were probably locked because they had game content or would have had game content on them. But overall, Windows was much more friendly with it, which was surprising. But what was even more surprising was the fact that it even booted, because it didn't boot on here. So I was so confused. Then I figured it out, I think. There was, if you ever had a hard drive that you were reading and writing to, and then somewhere along the line it got a little screwed up, and then the drive wasn't working quite right, and you put it back in your computer, and it immediately said, like, hey, there's a problem with your drive, do you want us to repair it? That little prompt that happens sometimes, that happened with this drive. So I told it to go ahead and do that, click it and repair it. Took like 10 seconds, and after that, everything was smooth as butter. Like, it just worked perfectly. There was no issues on the drive, and I was like, is that all that happened? The console did the system update. Something in the update didn't read-write properly, more likely write properly, and then the system failed on that. And so the drive needed a quick fix, but the Xbox lacked the software to fix it. All it could do was attempt to reinstall, but because it couldn't write to it because of that issue, boom, didn't work. So what I'm telling you is, if you get to the point where you've tried the system dashboard update offline and that didn't work, there's actually a very good chance you still don't need to buy a hard drive. You will probably have to take the system apart, which I can't do, but again, there's teardowns online. You take the drive out, connect it to a Windows-based PC. If it says, hey, there's a problem with your drive, but we can fix it, tell it to go ahead and click it, it'll fix it. Take the drive back out, put it back in. It might actually work at that point. You probably still have to do an offline system like installation, but now it's read-writable, meaning you didn't have to do that, like buying an SSD. I just did it because that's what I thought I had to do. So those are the multiple options you have Start with the obvious, whatever the Xbox itself can do to repair it. If that fails, take the drive out, put it in your computer, see what it does. If it can repair it, great. Put it back in the system, do the installation, done. If that doesn't work, consider changing out the drive. You could replace it with another 1 terabyte, 2.5 laptop style drive, either 1 terabyte, 500 gigs, 2 terabytes. The drive size doesn't have to match. It used to, like it had 1 terabyte, so there was a time where you had to clone it with a 1 terabyte. Now it's, as long as you pick any one of those 3 sizes, it'll be fine. If that process doesn't work, then your drive itself might actually be dead and you have to swap it out. I don't regret doing it because this Xbox runs way better with an SSD. But now, as a bonus, I have a spare 1 terabyte drive hanging around that I have extra storage for. So honestly, it kind of all worked out just fine. So yeah, hopefully that helps you, and a huge shout out to my boy Chicago Pizza Slut, Chicago Pizza Dad, for helping me do this. If you ever want to talk to him or talk to any of the guys in my Discord, it's pretty active in there. There's going to be a link in the description. Anyway, hopefully this helped you guys. Thank you very much for watching. Please do me a favor. Please like this video, comment down below, subscribe if you haven't done that before, and check out all my social media stuff in the description. I've got Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Discord, Patreon, Spreadshirt, my travel channel called Flying and Eating. I appreciate the support on those platforms. Also, I will put a link to a teardown of how to get into this Xbox One X specifically if you actually have the hard drive issue. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all later.